All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 83 of the Hideout, where we are going to be talking about Web3 gaming and the Metaverse. For those of you who don't know, the Hideout is a weekly Twitter Spaces. We've been doing this now for close to a year and a half, so very excited to have another awesome panel here. We're going to be having games and gaming infrastructure projects. I think we're waiting on one more guest, but we can get started with introductions and then we can start diving into the questions. And if they show up, we'll get them up here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nick Frontera. I am one of the founders and the CEO of Apollo Entertainment, the company behind Satoshiverse and the Legions 2029 game. I guess for those of you who don't know about the game or what we're building with Satoshiverse, I do see a lot of familiar faces, but very quickly, Satoshiverse is a project that we started back in 2020 with legendary comic artist Jose Delbo, who worked with DC and Marvel for close to 30 years as a penciler behind Wonder Woman, Transformers, and some of the other biggest names in the superhero industry. Together, we created one of the first Bitcoin superheroes called Satoshi the Creator, based on Satoshi's story. Over the last 3 years, that has expanded into an entire comic and gaming universe built on the blockchain. Legions 2029 is our flagship game. It is a hybrid between a roguelike, an RPG, and a hack and slash game. So it plays very fast, very arcadey. The combat is inspired by God of War, and there's a lot of progression elements that fully utilize blockchain technology, and everything is built to be maintained on the blockchain. So really smooth blockchain experience. I won't go into too much detail because I actually think the videos and the thread that we posted at the top of the space gives you all you need to know. But I guess the most important thing is that it's free to play. So anyone who would like can jump in, download it. It is a PC game, so you do need a PC to play it. It can be downloaded on our website or on the Hyperplay launcher for the blockchain-enabled version. There will be other places you can download it in the not too distant future, but for now, that's where it's at. And yeah, we've got a lot of really interesting stuff coming up. We're going to make a bunch of announcements in the coming weeks and months. I guess the theme of today, though, is that Jose Delbo, who many of you know, recently passed away, minted a really special NFT collection before his passing. Those NFTs, that collection called the Masters, goes live today and runs over the next 4 days, with auctions being staggered to start and close over the next 4 days. That's on Nifty Gateway. All the information is in the post above and on Jose's profile, so just check it out. And yeah, it's awesome to be here. So let's jump into our speakers. I'm going to unmute everybody now. And then if you guys could just give a quick introduction of yourselves, the project, when you got into the space, what you guys are building. Feel free to pin anything visual to the top of the spaces. We love visuals, any kind of gameplay trailers or anything that would show off what you guys are building in a visual way. We're happy to have it up there. But let's start with Synergyland. Welcome to the space.
Hey guys, thanks for having me again. Are you hearing me? All good?
All
Awesome.
good, loud and clear.
Awesome. So I'm Vanessa Amaral. I am the marketing manager for Synergy Games, a game development studio based in the Canary Islands in Spain. I've been working in marketing for over 10 years now. I specialized in content creation, social media, strategy, and community building and management. And my first Web3 experience is actually Synergyland. So I joined the team back in September. This is our first title. Synergyland is our first title. It's an action RPG. It takes place in a fantasy world with 4 biomes, earth, water, fire, and ice. It's free to play, already playable as an early access. And since an hour ago, we have made a major announcement. We are partnering with the Treasure Chain, and we are moving there from Polygon really soon. So here's some recently fresh updates. So today is a crazy day for us and in our community, but very glad to be here. Thanks for inviting.
Very cool. Well, excited to dive in a bit deeper about what you guys are building. Let's go over to Bit Hotel. Welcome to the space.
Hey guys, thank you for the invite. Yeah, everything that you guys talked about from the Masters collection by Jose, may he rest in peace, as well as Synergy Land, looks insanely interesting. We just went through everything and yeah, looks awesome, guys. So my name is Leon. I am part of the Bit Hotel team. Bit Hotel is basically a new version of the old Flash game called Habbo Hotel from back in the day. That's, well, I would suggest a lot of people played back then, especially the Web3 native folks. Most of them know about it. So Bit Hotel came into existence around 4 years ago. It's this, social, open world game where you can compete against each other in mini games. It's playable on web as well as on app. So we are on iOS and Android as well. Completely free. And yeah, there's a lot to do, and there's a lot of people playing every day. I think on the radar there's around 8,000 people logging in every day. That's tracked on chain. And yeah, I won't spoil it, but if you loved Habbo back in the day, definitely check us out. And yeah, eager to discuss Web3 gaming, where we're standing with that in this cycle, and be part of the panel.
Sounds great. Well, welcome to the space, and let's jump over to Spencer on the Hideout account. Give us a quick introduction, do some housekeeping items, and get us into the questions.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Spencer Vogel. I'm the Business Development Manager with Satoshiverse and Apollo Entertainment. Very happy to be here asking the questions on the space today, and nice to meet all of you. So quick housekeeping item before we get into the questions here. So for those of you who have been here before, and maybe for the people who are joining us for the first time, so we do a giveaway on every single one of our spaces. And we're going to be giving away today 5 Satoshi's crystals, which is one of our main in-game resources, which allows you to upgrade all of your items and characters within the game. Very, very important resource within the Satoshiverse. So we're going to be giving away 5 crystals today. And the way that you're going to be able to enter to win that, I just pinned a post to the top of the space that says "We're live." All you have to do is repost that post, and then still be here at the end of the space when we announce our winner, and you'll be entered to win a prize. So hopefully, everybody could please go do that. And then as well, if you haven't already, we'd really appreciate it if you could follow the Hideout account. We are trying to build up the brand on the Hideout. So if you enjoy what we're talking about here on the space today, please consider giving us a follow. Moving now into the format. So we're going to start out with a question for everyone in the group. I'll call on someone to start, and then feel free to just jump into the conversation from there. Then we'll move into some individual questions, and then get into some group questions again at the end if we have time. Perfect. All right. So first question, and maybe Vanessa, maybe you could start us off on that one. So the question is, what are the key challenges and opportunities for achieving seamless interoperability between games and metaverses, and how can this be achieved?
Damn, sir. Starting with me, it feels bad, man, because this is really not my field of expertise, but I can give my 2 cents. So key challenges, top of head, killer challenges might include ensuring compatibility across different platforms and standards, and some security concerns. In terms of opportunities, well, I think it lies in creating a more connected and immersive experience for users. Those are my 2 cents.
Nice. I'll take it over then. To add on to what you said, I indeed think compatibility is a big issue. There's We have been basically integrating with a lot of different games with BitHotel, wherein if you own a certain item in another game, you can actually play it in our game as well. And we have even done this with DeFi platforms as well that have specific NFT collections. Just to give an example, I think they're called DeFi Llama, something like that. Oh no, Alpaca Finance, that's it. Different animal, looks the same. They have an alpaca collection, and these are actually playable characters in our game as well. And they give perks on their DeFi platform. So, what challenges we encountered with this is the art styles, of course, they oftentimes differ. We are in a pixel art style, and they had a much more line art style. So to make that, to translate that in an interesting way wherein it still feels the same, but, it's actually playable and it works. That's always a challenge. And, there's many games that are more 3D art, like the game from, the Bored Ape guys. If you want to translate that to multiple different other games, you have to have a lot of designers with different skill sets at work that can sort of translate it into the right formats, the right art style. And yeah, that's a big challenge. That's, I think, one of the bigger ones. While, the asset on chain can be recognized very easily if the different games use the same blockchain, right? So seeing if somebody has a certain item in their wallet, and as a game allowing users to use that item, and that's the beauty of a blockchain. It's all the same standard. So, that's where it's easy compared to normal games. But, the compatibility of the style and, everything that comes with that is definitely a hard one. So there's definitely opportunities there, I would say. There are some protocols like Style Protocol. If you Google that, Style Protocol, they're trying to solve this. We are working with them as well, to find ways to, make different games compatible and work out certain industry-wide standards that every game can employ, and can even allow games to crowdsource designs, which is really cool that they're doing. So, you can submit a design and the game can say, okay, wow, this is great. You build it in the right format as well. We can plug this in and provide you a reward. So, there's a lot of people solving these issues as well. So definitely shout out to them, Style Protocol. Check them out. But yeah, that's, I guess all I have to say on the matter. Curious to hear what the others think.
Yeah, I think between the two of you summarized it very well. I guess to the extent I can add anything, it's just expanding on what's been said. I think that interoperability has always been kind of a tricky, goal that I think we've aspired to for a long time in this space. And I think like you were saying, that the promise of blockchain is to make the authentication part easy, and it does, right? Like, it's very easy for us to read whether or not you have, even on multiple blockchains, right? As long, at least in most cases, as long as it's EVM compatible, it's just a matter of, switching where we're looking, and we can do and have done a lot of that, in the past. And I guess, that's great, but it doesn't necessarily solve the issue. And I think you hit the nail on the head, is that infrastructure needs to be developed and standards need to be adopted, across different games to really allow for this to happen. And so I think what we're seeing, and kind of what you mentioned before, is that the majority of interoperability right now is happening through mostly closely connected projects that are engaging in partnerships. So, some examples: Decentraland has their linked wearable collection. It was a ton of work to work with Decentraland in those early days to develop the back end so that we could do those linked wearables collections with them, and make sure it all worked, and set everything up and create all the assets in a format that was compatible with Decentraland. But then you had, some real interoperability where your NFT would be represented in one way in Decentraland, but in another way if you played our game, for example. I think that is the beginning. I think projects are also experimenting with interoperability within their own ecosystems. But like you said, with Style Protocol, or, there's several different projects like Ready Player Me or Emergence that are working more on the, high fidelity side, where the goal is, okay, let's allow projects to upload these files to, more centralized repository for the data storage, and then allow teams to implement APIs and tap into these standards and adopt them for their game, because there is a bit of standardization that already occurs. For example, on Unreal Engine or Unity, there's a default rig and a default mannequin for the human model, right? So there is a bit of standardization that already exists. But even then, you could be talking about a game like Fortnite, which is much more low poly and might use the same rig. But then if you want to go to a photorealistic game, it's going to look very different. The art style is going to clash. You're going to have different texture standards and requirements that you need to meet. Optimization is going to be a concern, especially if you're talking about a mobile or a browser-based game. So, I mean, the reality is that we're headed in the right direction, but I think we're still pretty far away. I guess for me, the opportunity is something that we've kind of seen play itself out many different ways in the Web3 space specifically, but more generally on social media, and that's the idea of a digital identity. I think at its core, one of the bigger use cases of interoperability is going to be to kind of maintain a digital identity across different ecosystems. And so, whether it's a Bored Ape and you just want to be your ape everywhere, or whether it's a Legionnaire or an avatar from a different project, people get very attached to these characters that are theirs, right? That are, it could be their art. It could be that they just have a unique character that they're able to use everywhere. And I think that the kind of dream there is that we'll have that interoperability so that, your identity can be maintained across different avenues. Now, that said, I think that there are, in the meantime, while we're waiting for these standards to be developed and working hard to develop them, there are things you can do that are easier than others. For example, one of the things that we've worked on is having essentially a customizable avatar that has a hero patch, where the hero patch could be any essentially JPEG file, right? So there it's good because we can take what we've done in the past is a logo, but that could just as easily, without too much extra work, be your unique NFT, whether it's a CryptoPunk or an ape. And sure, you're not running around as your ape, but you're bringing that aspect with you. And then you're really just, the blockchain side of that is pretty easy. You're just verifying that they have it and pulling the metadata from the blockchain. But I guess that's the other, I think, challenge here, is that when you actually look at, even for most 3D collections, when you look at what files are actually loaded to IPFS or whatever storage, accessible storage system the metadata of the NFT is pointing to, it's typically not what you would need to render a game asset in the game. And so there, at least in its current form and how NFTs are currently conceived, all the information isn't there. You still need the assets, right? And so I think that's more of a testament to establishing protocols that allow either the right data to be uploaded and the data to point to that data directly, or some sort of, routing system where you can call that, but then there's some sort of redirect to a file storage, because putting all that on IPFS sometimes can be, challenging, in that, IPFS is slow and doesn't always load bigger files. So if you want, higher fidelity stuff, rigged models, things in formats that might not be acceptable for NFTs, you have to develop those standards. So I think we have some challenges really to address. I don't think interoperability in the, Ready Player One kind of format is close. I think we're probably still quite a long time away. I think more likely than not, what we're actually going to see is the idea develop itself a lot more in centralized ecosystems. I mean, we're already seeing Roblox with their UGC tools kind of start to really make it, within a pretty broad universe, you're able to use the same character in very different experiences. Fortnite does it, but they don't have the UGC abilities. So, I can use my Superman avatar in both the regular Fortnite and the racing and in Lego Fortnite, and it looks like a Lego. That's really cool, but it's very centralized. But the idea is there, right? That idea of identity. And I think it'll be some time before you can do that in a decentralized way. But I think, it's a spectrum that we're pushing towards that ideal. And I think there's a lot of things we can do along the way to meaningfully collaborate and do some really interesting stuff. So I don't think the fact that it's really hard and probably a little ways away means that we shouldn't focus on it. I just think that we need to temper expectations as to when we'll have this true interoperability, just based on what I've seen in the industry. Happy if anyone wants to comment on that, feel free. Otherwise, we can move into the individual questions.
All right. Well, I'll take the silence as a cue to move into individual questions then.
Absolutely. I just wanted to say I think you hit the nail on the head there. So let's move on. I think your parallel of Roblox was also very solid. Definitely a great place to look at what's ahead.
Awesome. All right. So the first individual question will be to Vanessa. So Synergy Land has a land-based system where players can own their own island NFTs. So what impact do you think land-based systems have on player economies?
Okay, so in Synergyland, we have these islands from each biome. So what it means specifically in our case and in other cases that it creates opportunities for player ownership and also a passive income. In our case, players can own, rent, and utilize various stations on their islands for activities like minting NFTs in the minting station. So you can get your NFTs out of the game and sell them, for example. Breeding pets, hosting PvP tournaments, tweaking your bosses. So this system fosters this so-called player-driven economy, allowing these landowners to earn our token, SNG, and also enhance the community engagement through this strategic land management and rental system.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I think land, like pay to play type of land systems, have been part of the Web3 space, since the beginning, since these early metaverses like the Decentraland and Sandbox and Somnium space, some of the early players. And I think we've had the benefit of seeing some of the things that work and some of the things that don't work, right, with these land-based systems. As someone who kind of came in through Decentraland and bought a bunch of land, I think that the challenge is that if you're charging people for land, you're essentially charging people to use the tooling and to, I guess, manifest or take advantage of the eyeballs that the project is bringing into the game, right? And I think that land and discovery, in order to sell land, you really need to be able to justify that with thousands of players who are going to be visiting your parcel, because I think at the end of the day, that's where the value is in owning, a discrete piece of property. And so I think, I really like the idea, and I've been a big proponent of gamifying land ownership. I think that there has to be reasons for people to visit your land. And I think if there's not, the model kind of falls apart. And so I think gamifying, making it so that certain things can only be done on landowners' land, and there is some way to kind of justify costs based on that. I mean, I think using it as a means of token emission is great as long as the token, you know, has utility within the ecosystem. And I think that's kind of the challenge for any project that releases a token long term. But I think it really does lend value. I think we've seen recently, with free land models like Nifty Island do a really great job of kind of ensuring that players are going to different lands and really trying to, you know, make experiences and have experiences, have easy toolkits, builders. But I think it's tough. I mean, I think that as a project, as a developer, when you buy land and commit to building on that land, it's a lot about, you know, okay, how do I actually, you know, either make money or get new people interested in my project or what I'm building, you know, because there's quite large investments usually to develop those lands and experiences. So I've always been a bit of a critic, I would say, of those things, but I do think that there is a path forward in the right, sorry, gamified system. I think that land ownership models can work. I just think that if it becomes too fragmented, right? If you have 55 metaverses all trying to sell land, the question becomes, okay, why this one instead of that one? And if we're talking, you know, a couple hundred users in each one, I think it's hard to justify. I mean, I probably paid, you know, $20,000 in the early days for all my land in Decentraland. That was a lot of money. You know, that was crazy. And it certainly hasn't held its value. But I think that the lesson there was, well, this was the experimentation, and now, you know, we can learn how to do it better and differently. So yeah, I'm definitely interested to see how you guys ultimately implement that and what it looks like. So I'm definitely a fan of the idea if it's done right.
What do you think, you know, looking back at, your experiences with buying land and Decentraland and building on top of that? What do you think they could have done better, you know, to make this go full circle? Like, what would you have done knowing all you know now? What would you have improved? What utilities would you have added? Do you think they did a good job on, you know, giving ample utilities and use cases to Decentraland land? Just curious to hear.
Yeah, so I think that Decentraland land was almost like the challenges they faced and the problems that they incurred were almost just a byproduct of them being the first and them being, you know, sold at a time where there was so much speculative interest around Web3 and, you know, everything that was surrounding it. So I think the challenge with Decentraland land in particular is that even though they did a really good job of creating a builder that allowed users to do some cool stuff with their land, the price points were totally out of proportion to the utility that was, you know, being provided. So most of those price points were speculative about, you know, what if this becomes a huge thing? There was no way I was going to get $10,000 or $20,000 out of value because there were only, you know, 5,000, 10,000 people using Decentraland at a time. There were 10,000 parcels. And so, you know, most of the activity was concentrated in very small areas at any given time. So I think that the challenge for any metaverse, but for Decentraland in particular, is that there was no real discovery mechanisms back then that incentivized people to come to land other than, you know, what the developers and the marketing team were doing. And you know, to their credit, the marketing team and the community team was great, and they put on events, and, you know, we had some really great experiences, you know, parties, but the parties had 50 people or 100 people. And so, you know, in our case, we were using that land, for example, to host a gallery for Jose Delbo. And so did we ever make our money back through the land? Maybe not. But did that amplify kind of the allure to being an early crypto artist? Was that something that made some of his work special? Were these parties and gallery exhibitions part of what contributed to Jose's success? Very possibly. I think people really enjoyed some of the stuff we were able to do in World. So, indirectly, I think in our case, we were able to leverage the land in a really productive way. I just don't think that the average user would be able to spend, 2,000. I mean, at that time, it was a couple ETH for a parcel, or thousands and thousands of mana. And I think the challenge was a lot of the early landowners, who believed in the metaverse and mana, spent a lot of mana on that land. And then, when mana did very well as a cryptocurrency, all of a sudden, the 50,000 mana that they had invested into some parcels that were worth 1 or 2 cents back then had now gone up to, $250,000, $300,000 of what if cost, right? And so now it was like, all right, well, the land certainly hasn't gone up in value that way. And so I think it was tough, because I think the problem with investing in metaverses that way was that you were probably attaching yourself to the least liquid assets within the platform. So yeah, I mean, I think that there are things you can certainly do as a metaverse to make land ownership part of like overall what makes it special. I think gamification is something that's super important. Discovery is something that's super important. You really need to give developers, because ultimately that's who's going to be creating the great content, right? Is actual developers. You have to give developers a reason to own the land and develop on the land. And then once you do, I think you have the potential for something sustainable. The price point has to be either extremely minimal, or if you want retail users, you're probably talking anywhere between $20 and $50. Or it needs to be developer focused, and it can be more expensive, but then the tooling and the eyeballs need to be a lot greater. So I do think that there is going to be a metaverse that gets it right. I think it's probably more likely it's going to be a centralized metaverse that, like Fortnite, if they have some sort of way of carving out ownership around. I don't know. I mean, you need millions of users, right, for that sort of model to work on 10,000 parcels or 50,000 parcels at the price points we're seeing. So it's all relative, right? It's like, what value are you getting for the price you're paying? And as long as you can justify that, I think the sale makes sense. But I also support, what like Nifty Island is doing which is free parcels. The ability to pay to expand on those parcels and do certain things, but, really gamified, engagement driven, discovery. So I don't know, there's a lot that can be done. I think we very intentionally did not build a metaverse because I think it's a huge challenge to scale. And I think it's very, it's a big undertaking. So kudos to anyone building a metaverse with land ownership, because it's tough. But I think that, there's a lot of lessons we can learn. I think the other challenge, if I'm being totally honest, is that one of the biggest takeaways I had from Decentraland, and maybe one of the criticisms, is that they established the DAO a bit too early. I think that the vision to execute a metaverse takes a long time, and it takes a very concentrated effort to achieve that vision. I think Decentraland's vision was to be decentralized, and I think that it's fair that they, got there quickly. I do think that inserted logistical inefficiencies that made it very difficult to develop the platform for the last several years. I think the Decentraland's finally getting to a place where they've found a system that works, and the DAO has matured enough that long term it could be for the better. But I think that, I think there's it's just like the right special recipe, I think, to make something like that work. And I think it's a challenge.
Awesome. Well, I will move the discussion along to our next individual question here, which goes to Leon. So Bit Hotel is a pixel art game with a big focus on social gaming. So how do you think Web3 technology can improve the social aspects of gaming specifically?
Yeah, I think back to the metaverse point, it's very challenging to make these social open world games where users can interact and such. So yeah, we've taken on some of these challenges, and we also had to balance out some of these functionalities and such to make them fun and to not spread out the players throughout too much, sort of digital space, meaning we had a lot of player-owned land as well, and we had some public spaces that are owned by, well, let's say the studio, so like a central lobby and an arcade area and the shop area, etc. And what we found is that if players were to always play mini games, they would teleport away from all these common rooms, and there would be very few players actually left, for conversation in these public rooms. So, we had to tweak a lot of our systems to at least give everybody, make it at least so that users are a bit more concentrated, meaning we didn't have any pre-game lobby. So while you were searching a game, you are still in the public space instead of being teleported to some sort of pre-game lobby where only users that are queuing up can be found. So you can still talk with your friends or random people in the public spaces while you are waiting for a game to connect to. So yeah, that's just one example of trying to remove some of these issues that Stoshiverse here just mentioned. And yeah, next to that, I do think it adds a very nice next level to a game. It definitely can increase retention a lot, albeit there's also a lot of admin work involved to adding social features, meaning there's always bad actors and you need to have a profanity filter or some other way to time people out, just to keep the vibe chill. Otherwise you're gonna, at some point get some frustrated community members because there are trolls everywhere, and they can create quite some situations. So yeah, it's a balancing act to sum it up, I guess. And it's not easy, but I think if you execute it well, it will definitely add a level of depth to your game, that should not be undervalued.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think that at their core, these Web3 projects, what makes them special is the community and social aspects of them. And so, creating a game that essentially extends those natural social components makes a ton of sense. And I think that's why I think we see even more like niche products succeeding, because they're essentially an extension of something bigger, right? I think that, there's definitely a big difference between what makes landowners happy and what makes players happy in games like this, right? I think they're essentially two different target markets, and thinking of them as such, I think, is important. It's hard to combine them, because I do think players want to see players concentrated in certain areas. I think landowners just want people to be in their place, right? Unless it's just you're owning it for personal reasons and it's not like a discovery based game. I think there is a challenge there, right? And I'm I guess it's interesting because the social components. You look at a game like RuneScape, for example, which I think is a testament to a game can evolve over time, look nothing like what it did before, and even if the game evolves and quote unquote becomes better, people are still going to like the core experience and play the core experience. As you see, most hardcore RuneScape players are playing the old version of RuneScape, not the new one. And it's interesting because that game was built on overarching gamification and questing, but at its core, it's a social engagement game, and it's you're playing with other players. It's an MMO. You're seeing players, you're trading with players, you're interacting with players. I mean, moderation's a nightmare, but they have bots that do some degree of it. But I think that's the model, right? And I think I think RuneScape is actually a great model for any metaverse platform in that it's a game where a big portion of the game is just walking around and going to places and doing quests, and there's an overall gamification element, but it also brings people together for certain reasons. And then I think, if you add some sort of land ownership mechanism, I think that's where it becomes interesting because, for example, just one example, you can mine rocks or fish in RuneScape, and that's going to give you a limited amount of resources, and that's going to help you level up, and then you're going to be able to do things within the game. Maybe part of the land ownership model is that, there's a limited number of rocks that can be mined, right? And so if a quarry is really full in one area, maybe you give landowners the ability to put these rocks on their land, and then you're going to have people there mining them because the other ones are full, and you have some sort of infrastructure that says, hey, this is where I want to mine. Okay, well, here's where there's an empty quarry. Boom, you take them to the land, and now they're going to spend an hour clicking in that location to try to mine these rocks and level up their mining ability. And so I've looked at that. I've always been a fan of that possibility. Nifty Island did something similar to that, where landowners could put these coins, these experience coins, on their land, which allows you to level up your own land. And you could go to other islands, and the more you level up your land, the more coins you can put, and the more coins you have in your island, the more people are going to want to come and collect them. So there's different mechanisms of gamifying discovery. But I think if you're building a metaverse, it's those two things. It's ensuring that there's enough people in one place for social interaction, and then gamifying discovery so that people don't feel like they're being pulled into something, but they feel like they're actually wanting to go and discover new aspects of the UGC that should be constantly evolving, right? I think in the right game setup, what makes it cool is that the game is being developed by the community, in the sense that they're using the tools to constantly be putting out new content. Curious if you have any thoughts on that.
All right. Well, if there are no further thoughts on that one, then we'll move on to our last group question before we close out the space. And this is more of a little fun one here. Maybe Nick, I'll have you start out on this one, since we haven't had you start out on the question yet. So what has been one of your favorite moments in Web3 recently, either personally or in the news?
Well, personally, so I'm going to give two because I think there's some cool stuff. Personally, we had a Twitter Spaces yesterday, remembering Jose and his legacy, and what he meant to the space. And I mean, not just recently, but maybe the entire 7 or 8 years I've been in the space. That Twitter Spaces was kind of a culmination of everything that Jose and I and the family were able to put out, and we had about 25 different collectors come up on stage and talk about their experience collecting Jose's art and what he meant to them. And so, as a proud grandson, and as, someone who was there for this whole journey and worked with him throughout the whole journey, I've never been, so touched by how much an artist meant to all of these people and kind of impacted their journey within the space. Learning about kind of, we had the former founder and CEO of Maker's Place on the space. And for those of you who don't know, Maker's Place is one of the very early crypto art platforms back in the day. Still are. They're still a great platform, have some really great art. And Jose got started there, and he was kind of telling the story about how, Jose was when he released on Maker's Place, he did this collection that was just an awesome collection. He released, the first ever comic book NFT, which was, a cool thing in and of itself. But that drop was one of Maker's Place. I think Maker's Place's biggest drop at that time and most successful drop, and that allowed them to go out and recruit a few different artists to do some really big drops. And then, you know, Jose did a drop with Trevor Jones, and that drop, you know, did 6 figures on a single piece. And it was like, wow, like, holy crap, that's a record. That's, you know, something new for the space. Now there's some legitimacy to artists can really do crazy things. And so I didn't have a lot of insight on how that impacted Maker's Place and their ability to go out and recruit artists. But then, you know, Jose did this collection with Hideout. I think that drop did something like 7 figures. And the only reason that's really important to me is that, and I didn't know this, is that gave Maker's Place the ability to go out and talk to people and say, hey, people, you know, hey, Christie's, let's look at what we've been able to achieve, look at what the platform's doing. We're able to host these big drops that do these big numbers. Let's do something together. And as I think many who were involved in the space know, you know, Maker's Place and Christie's hosted the Beeple drop that did $63 million on the piece and essentially kickstarted the NFT boom, you know, at that time. And so just understanding, I think, how impactful just working hard in this space can be. And because it wasn't me, it definitely wasn't just me. I think there were so many people involved in making all those early days a success that could kickstart an entire industry is insane. So, and I never really had that context until yesterday. So for me, that was really special. It kind of put things in a perspective that I never thought we could even touch that. You know, obviously Jose achieved some great things, but I think together with some, you know, a small group of artists, they really were able to launch the space and kind of create the market for everything that we're trying to do now. So that was really special, really important to learn that. For me, it kind of reinvigorated certain things, made me very excited about the drop that we've got coming up and just, you know, the space in general. I think I remember those times where everyone was just super excited about the technology. And I feel that whenever I talk to other gaming projects on these spaces is, you know, it reminds me of 2017 talking to, you know, some of these Metaverse founders, like the founders of Sandbox and Decentraland, you know, conversations I had with Esteban or Sebastian from Sandbox. You know, these are people who were in very similar mindsets and now are obviously incredibly successful and achieved great things within the space. But it was these same conversations, right? And so I think that we're at that precipice for Web3 gaming. And so for me, the kind of recent news, obviously for me personally, it was just at Twitter Spaces. But, you know, beyond that, I think generally speaking, I am starting to really feel like we're almost there. I'm starting to feel like we're seeing the big projects start to release their alphas and the games look good. You know, we're seeing the narrative start to change around crypto. We're starting to see the potential for a new bull cycle to emerge, which is going to, you know, just continue to help to help development and ensure funding and make sure that the projects that have good intentions are able to survive. I think it's tough because everybody, you know, we have a lot of indie studios that are operating on tight budgets and funding has been pretty dry for the last 2 or 3 years. And it's been hard to, you know, crowdsource funding through NFTs. So I think a lot of projects are just trying to get by. But I do feel the wind shifting. And I think that is inspiring and it makes me excited because not just what we can achieve, but, you know, every week we get to talk to founders like you guys who are doing these things and are right there with us, you know, fighting the good fight. And it's going to be this work that in 4 or 5 years, we're going to be on the Twitter space and we're going to be hearing how this led to this led to this, and this led to this. And it's gonna be like, holy shit, we did that, right? And I think that's what's gonna be special. And yeah, I think that's what's getting me fired up these days.
Awesome. Vanessa, do you have anything?
Yeah, sure. So I would like to go more personally into this because to me, my favorite moment on Web3 recently is actually learning about Web3 because this is a totally new field for me. I was working retail previously and other gaming projects, but not Web3 related. Of course, I've been a crypto investor myself since 2022, not a degen, definitely, but it's been the learning about this space, their people, and getting to build, a community and a brand around two things that I'm super passionate about, which are marketing, communities in particular, and video games. So it's been a hell of a ride, and I'm loving each and every second of it.
Love it. Well, welcome to the space, and I'm glad you're learning. Leon, anything that you got before we close out the space?
Um, I think, we've been in the space for around 4 to 5 years. Literally every week is an adventure. Like the pace at which this industry moves is alarming. I already feel like I aged 10 years in the last, say, year and a half, with all the challenges. So, my wrinkles aside, I do think that, there's so much innovation going on, and in terms of like new features, new metas, new ways to use the blockchain technology. Yeah, like if you really keep your eyes open, you see new applications every week with, the recent clicker games in the Telegram web applications being very popular, to point-based airdrop campaigns being sort of meta right now. All these things 6 months ago were basically, not popular at all, or not even invented yet. So I think, yeah, when it comes to some alpha and some new things, you only gotta look at, what's being shared by the Twitter influencers, and you'll learn something new every 2 to 3 weeks. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's just a little bit of insight from my end on the space as of now. And yeah, if anybody wants to read what I'm interested in, definitely just send me a DM on Twitter, or have a look at who we follow as a profile, and you'll probably learn quite a bit as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And I guess I'll say on a quick personal note, as much as I love being able to come into these online spaces, I really appreciate being able to go to some of the conventions and conferences. So I found that those have been really exciting, and, gives a different level of excitement to the space. So yeah, Consensus, we were at, just, end of May, and then, a couple members of our team are going to be going to Bitcoin Nashville, this upcoming week. I'll be going to San Diego Comic-Con this week. So yeah, very, very excited about all that, and to kind of see, over the last couple of years, you've seen a little bit more and a little bit more stuff, Web3 related at Comic-Con. So excited to see, what new things are in store. I'm sure we'll see Pudgy Penguins and them doing their thing, but excited to see who else is there. Going to announce our winner real quick, and then I'll pass it back to Nick to close out. So the winner of our giveaway today for 5 Satoshis crystals is Laughing Colors, or at Laughing Colors 0. Congratulations, Laughing Colors. If you do not already have an account for Satoshiverse, please go to game.legions2029.com, create a free account, and then please send a DM to the Satoshiverse account with your username, and we'll make sure to drop those crystals into your account. Nick, I will pass it back to you to close out.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Spencer. Thank you to our two wonderful guests today. As always, very insightful conversation. This space, the hour always flies by, but this is my way of learning about what everybody is doing in the space. So definitely really enjoyed talking to both of you and understanding what you're building and your perspectives. Very insightful. I guess from a Legion standpoint, if you weren't here earlier, please check out the game. We have a pinned tweet at the top of this spaces, but also on our profile. You can download the game for free. There are tons of contests going on right now. You can win different prizes, including NFTs and USDC. So just a lot of cool stuff that we're doing with our campaigns. But we're more than anything, we're building the game, we're developing it in public. If you play the game and you like it, great. Give us that feedback. If you don't like it, even better. Let us know what you don't like, and we're at a point where we can still change things and fix it and continue to develop in the future. So really excited to continue doing this with all of you guys. I'll reserve the last couple minutes for our two guests. If you guys have anything that you want to remind people of or direct them, please feel free. And then I'll wait about 30 seconds after you guys finish, and then I will close the space since there's a slight delay. But yeah, feel free, Synergy Lands or Tell, to give any kind of closing information that you'd like.
Okay, so thanks for having me. First of all, glad to be here representing Synergyland. Lots of cool stuff going on right now with our latest announcements, with the partnership with Treasure and us migrating our project to Treasure. So, well, all I can say is go to our link in bio, join our Twitter, and go to our link in bio. Join our Discord for the latest news and updates and leaks. And, of course, join for our amazing and vibrant community. We love them, and we love the support we've been getting from them. So that's me, and that's Synergyland. Thank you so much for having us here.
Yeah, thank you everybody here for attending, and thank you for all the hosts and speakers as well for providing their thoughts and, having I think a healthy discussion on everything. It was a great pleasure to be here. If you're interested in playing Bit Hotel, and if you were a previous Habbo Hotel player, or you're just into pixel art style games, check us out. You can play Bit Hotel very easily by clicking the link in bio. You don't need to download anything unless you're playing on mobile. Hope to ever join this panel again. Love what you guys are doing on a weekly basis. So talk soon.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I'll close out the spaces now. Thanks so much.